Welcome to the F.E.A.R Chronicles, false evidence appearing real, where we are covering real stories for navigating burnout, bold moves, and becoming your best self. I'm your host, Natasha Agha, private practice strategist, mother of two, and recovering perfectionist. This is the space where we get honest about the pivots, the pressure, and the purpose behind it all. If you're navigating life transitions, career shifts, motherhood, or learning to trust yourself again, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. I am a former burned out SLP turned private practice consultant and strategist. So I spent some time thinking about how I wanted to share my story. And so I've decided that I'm going to make this a series. I don't know how many, but I can't fit it all into one live because that would be ridiculously long, especially for all of the golden nuggets that I want to include. So I think I'm going to call it the F.E.A.R Chronicles, but I don't know. I haven't decided. But fear as in false evidence appearing real. So, because when I think about my journey from the very beginning, um, even through today, that seems to be a constant that I feel that it's really worth talking about and really, picking and piecing it out. And that's what I want to share along with my journey, of course. So, it's ruled my career early in my career and into different pieces of my life. So, again, I don't know how many episodes this is going to be, but for now, in order to really set the stage, I have to start at the beginning without truly dating myself too much, but in the sense that if we're going back to the beginning of my career, this would be 15 years ago, give or take. So we're going to start there. And I didn't want to forget anything, so I'm going to just peek at my notes here and there. But so 15 years ago would be around the time that I finished grad school. So I I might just go even a little bit before that. While I was in school, I was the one person in my class that worked. And when I worked multiple jobs. So I'm not even kidding, would work three, four, five. Now, not obviously none of them are full time, but I would just work all these different jobs. I loved learning different things and worked, as a barista for a long time too because I loved getting tips. So I had cash. But I digress. So I finished school, quit all the jobs, and was ready to go off into big girl land. And I relocated. I believe, the only one in my class too that decided that I wasn't going to stay. And I left and I moved. I found a job and moved to Washington State, where I was for about two and a half years. So I stuck with one job, but I completed my CF and I worked and I stayed, but I worked multiple facilities because that's just kind of the way naturally it is for a speech pathologist. I worked in skilled nursing homes. So I worked there for a couple years for that company, I should say, and then I decided I wanted to change. I began looking for jobs there, but then realized I was spending so much time coming back home that I just decided to come home. Um, but long story short, as far as my point, is that from then on, I never stayed at a job for more than a couple of years. So if I really averaged out the next 10 plus years of my career and my life, I switched jobs every 2 years. I also moved about as often, so almost every year, a year and a half. I moved apartments, moved townhouses. I was renting for a long time, and I would just move. Every time my lease was up, I'd move. And around that time, I would change jobs. And I did that for many, many years. And then I decided that I wanted to learn more. So I set my sights on management. So I did. I switched jobs again. I lost track, so I couldn't even tell you how many times I switched jobs before I even became a director of rehab. But I did, and then I did that and learned. I wanted to learn all the back ends of scheduling and insurance and going to all the meetings and just I wanted the to learn the back end, and because I knew down the road that all of this knowledge would be worthwhile, and I was like, why not get paid to learn how to do these things that you want to learn how to do? Um, and even when I was a rehab director, I continued on the same pattern. I would stay maybe a year. I think the time frame started getting shorter and shorter. Um, I changed companies, I changed buildings. I continued to move very frequently until I decided I wanted to buy a house. And because the rent was just getting, I didn't want to pay as much as I was paying for rent when I knew I could pay less for a mortgage. I eventually did buy a house, but I continued to move jobs. And then I decided that I didn't want to be a manager anymore. Um, and then around that time that I decided I didn't want to be a manager anymore is when I got pregnant with my son. So I was not a mother up until that point. So I say all of this because at this point, that's just my life. I worked well over 40 hours a week. I did at one point before I got pregnant, was started picking up other jobs with I don't know what time. I really didn't have any. Um, and it was like I was chasing something. Like, I wanted to learn more. So I chased leadership. And then I still felt like something was missing. And, my life, if you looked at it at the time, logically everything made sense. I had a good job on paper. I had a home. I was doing all the things, but I didn't feel complete. I still felt like there was something off. And then I got pregnant. And so there's a whole nother layer that gets added to this piece because I had decided I no longer wanted to work in the position that I was in. And then I felt kind of stuck. Um, and so I stayed, even though I did not want to be in that role, because I really didn't feel like I had any options because I was pregnant and in my brain at the time, I said, well, who's going to hire a pregnant woman at this point? Because then I'll have to be on mat leave and all the other things. So I stayed. Um, and then I, I was going through the motions, still working a lot. I had trouble creating boundaries, um, and sticking to them. And, you know, there's an internal struggle that I had. And there was that false evidence appearing real. So I didn't think I could go anywhere. And so I worked up through my delivery, and then I went on maternity leave. And there's obviously a big shift in priorities at that point because now I'm a little human and I'm a mother. And I did return to work because I needed money. And so it came back with so many a different perspective, different priorities, and I was still working the same type of hours with the same demand on my job. And I realized very quickly that this wasn't what I wanted to do. And this wasn't where I needed to be. And it wasn't a very parent first environment, meaning that there wasn't a lot of forgiveness for my son was very sick when he was little. And so that resulted in, missing days and taking time off and taking him to the pediatrician and all the other things. And so it wasn't I didn't I didn't want to answer to anybody anymore. It didn't feel good to me, and I knew that this isn't what I wanted to do anymore. Um, so I really had to ask myself the question of what was it that I really wanted. And so, I sat with that. I am notorious for writing pros and cons lists for any big decisions I make in my life. And so I did that, and then I kind of did a brain dump of what would I like to do? And I decided, based on all the things that I did, that I wanted to open a private practice. But further than that, I decided what was something I was really interested in was video swallow studies. So in my time when I worked in Washington State, I met a colleague who I used his mobile MBS services. And so I kept in contact with him because I said, one day, this is something that I would love to do. I've never seen it in the state that I'm from. And it's that's what I did. I contacted him. He had an older truck that he was going to sell. He sold it to me, and I said, "Oh, perfect." And then, the chips fall where they may. I'm trying not to get in the weeds about all the things, but I have many stories about how all this transpired. But um, so I made the decision, found the truck, decided, okay, now I need to quit my job, and this is what I'm going to do, and figure out all the things in order to do that. Um, I'm gonna pause the story here because there's so much that goes into what happens next, but I obviously quit. I gave my notice and quit my job. Um, but going back to kind of what led up to all the things, obviously there was a lot of change, but we're talking about a pretty large time frame here. I would say about almost 10 years from maybe eight. I don't know. Math is not my strong suit, but going from out of school to all the years and the patterns and in the moment living it, it never really occurred to me. It just was, I didn't like it. I gave myself, like, I'll say excuses. It was, I would quit for various reasons and move for various reasons. It would be, I didn't like the staff, or I wanted a different manager, or I just wanted to work somewhere closer to where I lived. And, all seemed rational, feasible, made sense, logical. But, looking now, I was in early stage of burnout in my career well before I thought I actually realized it, which is beyond where we are in my story. So it's very interesting. To really, hindsight truly is 2020, to think about all of that. But what I want to leave you with, because I know I really didn't get into, it doesn't seem like I really got into my story, but my story starts so early that that's why I had to even go in before private practice land, because there's already a lot of things brewing before what I thought I discovered when I discovered it. So so I have some questions that I just want to throw out there for you to think about, because it was very, I've sat with these and it's very interesting, when you sit and you think and you truly think about these, like what comes up for you. So the first one is, have you ever felt like you were running but not really sure from what? Or what from, I should say. Let me work on my grammar here. And So for me, again, I never truly thought I was running from something. I thought I was running to something. At least that's what, my belief was at the time, which wasn't necessarily true. That's just something that, I kind of conjured up in my mind. Another question is, I kind of said this already, but are you chasing the next opportunity, or are you avoiding your current reality? Now this one, that one is probably my favorite, that I really like. It really pulled out some of those pieces for me because my true belief was that I was, on to the next, bigger and better, doing the things, do. And that's always been kind of where I would operate from. especially for years, especially pretty much my whole adult life, is I'm a doer. So it's action. I kind of don't know when to stop, right? So, but really, if you take a look at my story, even though it's a very glossed over version, I was avoiding. I was doing and avoiding. And I was chasing, but I was running. So, um, and the last question I have for you to sit with is, what role has fear played in your career decisions? That's a doozy. Because you may instantly, like, just instinctually say, well, none. But think about it. So for me, if I think back to fear, what that played, I I feared, which is going to really sound kind of like it doesn't make sense. Even though I truly longed for um, more time, more money, I was operating out of a place of fear. And I thought that I had to work my work my life away in order to reach my goals or my aspirations, which was to make more money. But in actuality, for all the hours that I worked and I was putting in, if I really, because I'm not going to do mental math right now, but if I pulled up my calculator, which I can't because I'm using my phone, which is my calculator to do that, I had done the math years ago when I was in the midst of this, and this is what I would do. And the hours that I put in with what I was getting paid for at the time, like it would equate to like maybe $20 less. Maybe. If I was being truly honest about the hours, it's like $5 an hour that I was getting paid for all the hours that I was putting in. So even though I was going above and beyond, I was getting paid to go above and beyond. So there was a lot of, yeah, fear that I couldn't make more or progress more in my career without, you know, basically working myself to death. So, and then I decided to switch gears. And so I finally, but it took the push of motherhood to do that, which is probably the best thing that's ever happened because I was on a trajectory. Because, like I said, just prior to getting pregnant with my son, even though I'm working 40, 50, I don't even want to say 40, it was well over 40 all the time, 50, 60-hour weeks, I still somehow managed to pick up another part-time job. That had nothing to do with speech pathology, by the way. That was kind of my thing at the time where I wanted to learn something else and I wanted to do something that was completely separate from something I did day in, day out. And so it actually was bartending because I miss being a barista and I wanted to learn something else. 'Cause I already knew in my mind that how to be a barista. So what was the next best thing? It was being a bartender. So so I did that. I did do that for a while. So again, I digress. This is why this is going to be a series because I get off topic. Well, not really, but but then and then I get into the weeds and I start telling you about something else. So this will be a to be determined number series. But even though this is kind of the prelude to everything, if my story hits home, if these questions kind of do make you think, and I truly hope that they do, because that's why I wanted to like leave them out for you to just ponder, to think about, because really at the end of the day, like, burnout, it manifests in so many ways in different ways for so many people. And, for me, when I thought about burnout or what I understood about burnout was not how it presented to me, which is why I didn't realize until years later that my burnout journey started well before I opened my private practice. And that, in fact, I made the decision and then continued to operate with my private practice already so far into burnout without even there's no reset button on that. So then I perpetuated that eventually with I don't want to. go into all of that yet, but because I was already in a space that I didn't even recognize was burnout. So, with that, you know, I invite you to reflect on the questions. I also will invite you to reflect on them deeper through the practice breakthrough assessment that I offer, which is a quick questionnaire, which you would submit back to me, and then I would provide a personalized video and a scorecard um, with all of my little golden nuggets based on your feedback to help you get out of burnout, but also to realign your practice so that it works for you and you're not working for your practice. So DM me. You can DM me breakthrough. You can leave a comment below. Either or, I'll see it. I'll message you back. So thanks for being here. I know that I tried to keep it short. I'm not sure how long this is. This is kind of the prelude, but this is going to be episode 1 of, I don't even want to put a number on it because I think I have ideas. So I'm going to leave it here. But next time I am going to share more nuggets, more about my story, but most importantly, again, I kind of touched on it already, but we'll go deeper, is what I completely got wrong about private practice and burnout, and the hard lessons that I learned that nearly had me quit, and there were a lot of them. But that is for another episode. And then even if you want just even takeaways, or if you have further questions, can't wait for the next episode. Tell me about it. But I will see you. I think I'll do it weekly. So I'll see you next week. Bye for now.
Thanks for joining me on the F.E.A.R Chronicles. If this episode resonated with you, I'd love for you to like, comment, or share with someone who needs it. Want more support? Check out the links below for free resources, workshops, and how to work with me. Remember, bold moves start with small shifts. You've got this, and I've got you.